Hello everyone, my name's John Hermans. Thanks for tuning in to Trivium Media, where I dig into the hidden knowledge and history that humanity can use to empower ourselves against those wishing to control and enslave us. And today, I want to get into the Trivium method, a method of learning and a method of consciously manifesting your reality. I also want to go over how the Trivium manifests our shared reality. So before we dig into what the Trivium actually is, we need to ask a few questions. First, why haven't you heard of the Trivium? Do you feel that our modern education system has been doing an adequate job raising children to grow into independent, critically thinking adults that can thrive in today's world? Is it possible that our modern education system has been purposely dumbed down to create confusion, obedience to authority, and willing slaves? How can we use the Trivium to remedy our current condition? These are the questions I hope to answer in this video. All throughout recorded history, the Trivium has been taught as a fundamental element in one's education. However, that started to change in the early 1800s. In 1806, Napoleon invaded Prussia, now East Germany, with his massive citizen army and obliterated the Prussian army. After the dust settled, the Prussian government investigated why they lost. They concluded it was because their soldiers were too disobedient. Their solution was to create an education system that was designed to create passive and obedient citizens rather than independent thinkers, to stifle natural curiosity and desire for knowledge and instead focus on memorization and conformity. The Prussian education system, as it's come to be known by, was an early example of outcome-based education, where instead of giving the students the tools to learn, it focused on a desired outcome, which was militarization and obedience to the state. This system was then picked up by most of the other superpowers, including the United States. In the United States, this system was mainly spearheaded by so-called intellectuals and industrialists like John Dewey and John D. Rockefeller, who used his vast wealth and influence through philanthropy to mold the system to his liking. I don't want a nation of thinkers, I want a nation of workers. John D. Rockefeller. In 1953, there was a congressional investigation officially called the Reese Committee. It was set up to investigate the influence of the tax-free foundations on public consciousness by way of advertising, media propaganda, and most importantly, education. Their main targets were the Rockefeller, Carnegie, and Ford foundations. In 1987, G. Edward Griffin interviewed Norman Dodd, the director of the Reese Committee, shortly before his death. In this interview, Dodd explains the key aspects of the Foundation's agenda, being the debasement and transformation of the education system into a vehicle of indoctrination, and also to wield this influence to push socialist legislation and globalist policies that would bring about the eroding of congressional power and transfer it to the executive branch. The declared aim being a silent, non-bloody revolution in the United States. Rowan Gaither, the director of the Ford Foundation, explains this ominously to Norman Dodd. All of us here at one time or another served in the OSS, operating under the directives of the White House. We still operate under those same directives. The substance of those directives is that we should use our grant-making power to so alter life in the United States that we can be comfortably merged with the Soviet Union. It's interesting that nothing substantive ever came from this committee, but as we can see, there has been a deliberate effort by powerful people to mold the minds of children so they can shape society into their image. This force and agenda is the reason why you've never heard of the Trivium. The ruling class simply cannot afford to teach you their age-old method of learning. The classical Trivium, as it's been known by, at its essence is a method of truth discovery and effective reality building. It is the first 3 steps and the most important of the 7 classical liberal arts, the remainder being the quadrivium, which we will not be getting into today. The Trivium as we know it came from ancient Greece, but probably existed before that in the ancient mystery schools of Egypt. It was seen as an essential part of education for hundreds, if not thousands of years before modernity. I would suggest that we don't really know how far back the Trivium goes, as it is basically a model for how the human brain works and is essential for a basic understanding understanding of our world. In fact, everything you have come to know by using the Trivium method, whether you were conscious of it or not. My speculation is that it got passed down with the rest of the mystery school traditions from a pre-deluge era, even from Atlantis itself. That is for another discussion though. The 3 steps of the Trivium are grammar, logic, and rhetoric. These can also be described in the terms of knowledge, understanding, and wisdom. We can even look at these in modern terms as input, processing, and output. We will now go ahead and further analyze each one. Grammar, also known as knowledge, is the foundation that we need to build off of. This includes not only the general grammar of language, so that we can come to a common understanding of definitions and ideas, but also the foundation of knowledge that we need to take in to achieve a certain task. In computer terms, it is the input, where the information enters the system. It is answering the who, what, where, when on a given subject. This is the first step, and must always be the first step. We cannot move on to logic without taking in a wide, eclectic range of knowledge, without bias or filtering. So now, on to logic. Logic, also known as understanding, is the art of thinking. It uses the law of identity and the law of non-contradiction to discover truth from the collected data. It is the filtering out and processing of the input information or knowledge. There are no contradictions in nature, so if we are getting contradictory pieces of information, at least one of those pieces of information has to be wrong. Logic uses the back and forth motion of induction and deduction to come to truth, theorizing about what you expect to be true and testing it against reality, bringing all the random pieces of information into an accurate understanding. So now that we have internalized all that knowledge into an understanding, it is time to move on to rhetoric. Rhetoric, also known as wisdom, is where the action takes place. Now that you've assembled the grammar on a given subject, come to an accurate understanding of that grammar, you are now ready to act on that understanding. Rhetoric can be thought about as effective communication or effective action taking. It is the output in the process and how we actually interact with the physical world. So are you properly using this method in your everyday life to manifest your desired reality? And is society using this method properly to manifest a free world? You've probably heard of the computer jargon term, garbage in, garbage out. This is because computers are using the same 3-step process of input, processing, output. The whole system of the Trivium depends on the quality of information going in. If we never take in the necessary knowledge to accomplish a certain task, it does not matter how much logic is applied. The desired outcome will not be achieved. This is not only true for individuals, but for society as a whole. If the majority of the population is not taking in the necessary knowledge to maintain a healthy and free world, that condition by law cannot manifest. Let's have a look at the different manifestations that will occur depending on if the Trivium was used properly or not. First off, we start at the foundation of grammar or knowledge. Here, we're either going to have knowledge or lack of knowledge, being ignorance. This leads to the logic block. This is where the decision-making processes take place. We are either going to come to an understanding or lack of understanding, or confusion. Onto the rhetoric block. Here, we are either going to act with wisdom or act with folly, the lack of wisdom. Note, it is impossible to act with wisdom if you have not taken in the necessary knowledge and come to an understanding. Ignorance does not lead to understanding, and confusion does not lead to wisdom. These steps must be taken in order. On to the last block of manifested reality. If the goal of humanity is freedom, we need to acquire the knowledge and understanding it takes to achieve that goal. But more importantly, we must then take action on that knowledge and understanding if change is to be manifested in the real world. I hope to discuss this in another video. Our manifested reality is a generated result of the aggregate human behavior. If the majority of the population is ignorant, confused, and acting on that confusion, the generated result we are going to see in society is chaos and ultimately slavery. However, if we take in a wide, eclectic range of knowledge, come to an understanding of that knowledge, and then act on that with wisdom, the natural order of freedom will emerge. The Trivium is just one aspect of the esoteric knowledge that is needed to free and empower humanity, and it has been occulted in order to keep us mentally enslaved. It can be used as a mental self-defense system to protect yourself against sophism, the negative use of rhetoric, by those wishing to control our behavior. One big piece of the puzzle that we need is the actual knowledge needed to maintain a healthy and free society, and I hope to be getting into that in another video. But for now, I'm going to leave it here, and if you guys enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe.